It had been 7 days since Pope Francis was last seen. The Vatican gave its official explanation: rest, exhaustion, privacy. But the world, already restless, wasn't at peace with that. Because on the 8th day, the white smoke rose again, and the name announced from the balcony across languages, across centuries, was Leo XIV. A name not heard since the year 855. There were no prior speculations. No papabili. No list. No journalists whispering about who it might be. Just a name, Leo IV. The man who stepped forward was calm, cloaked in white, but his face never seemed to settle. Each photo of him looked slightly wrong. Not doctor, just off. In videos, his eyes seemed to blink slower than the frame rate. His voice was too measured, as though each syllable weighed more than it should. And when he spoke Latin, old, forgotten Latin cardinals who studied the language their entire lives stopped breathing. The internet stirred, and in a quiet recording studio in downtown Los Angeles, Keanu Reeves sat down for a brief promotional interview. A film was being released, something sci-fi, distant from religion. But the interviewer threw in a current topic at the end: "So, Keanu, what do you think about the new pope? Leo XIV. Pretty unusual name, right?" He didn't answer right away. His hands were clasped. His face still, but not neutral. The interviewer smiled. "You look like you've got something to say." Keanu looked up. "Finally, I met him," he said. She blinked. "Wait, you met Pope Leo?" "Yes." "When?" "Last week. Before he was elected." The interviewer leaned forward, unsure if he was joking. But he didn't laugh. "I was in Alaska. Outside Anchorage. I wanted to be quiet for a while. There's a monastery there. Franciscan. Remote. Snowed in. I stopped in their chapel just after dusk." Keanu's voice didn't change. But something behind his words felt heavy. There was an old man sitting there. Not a monk. No collar. Just black robes. Alone. "When I walked in," he said without looking at me, "the fire that comes won't burn stone. It will burn memory." The interviewer stared. "You're saying that was?" I didn't understand at the time. I thought he was quoting scripture. But when I sat down, he turned to me. And he knew my name. "What did he say?" Keanu looked down, then back up. He said, "You carry water. Not flame. But when the dome falls, do not run. Wait in the ash. That's where I'll meet you again." She froze. "What dome?" I asked him the same thing. He smiled. And said, "The one they forgot they built." "And you didn't recognize him?" I thought I did. But I told myself it was nothing. He leaned forward now, voice lower. "But when I flew back to LA, and turned on the news and saw that man on the balcony, I knew. That was him. That was Leo XIV. The room went quiet." "You think he's not human?" "I didn't say that," Keanu replied. "But I don't think he was chosen." "Then how did he become pope?" "I think," he paused. "He came back. It began quietly. No lightning in the sky. No earthquakes. No press releases from the Vatican. Just a name that didn't belong to him, spoken by strangers with calm certainty. The first time, Keanu thought it was a mistake that he was walking down a side street off Ventura Boulevard, wearing a beanie and a faded hoodie. A boy on a bicycle sped past, then circled back, slowing to match his pace. "Hey, Leo," the boy called cheerfully, giving a nod, then pedaled away before Keanu could say anything. That he stood there a moment, frowning, watching the boy disappear into the light. That a coincidence, he thought. Probably knows a guy who looks like me. Probably thinks I'm someone else, but it happened again 2 days later. At the Silver Lake Farmers Market, Keanu reached across a stall for a bag of dried figs when the older vendor smiled and said, "Take 2, Leo. You always know what's ripe." Keanu stopped. "What did you just say?" The vendor blinked, startled. "I said, sir. I think. Didn't I?" Keanu didn't answer. Just walked away, carrying both bags, his heartbeat slightly faster than before. 3 days later, at a bookstore in Pasadena, he placed a collection of monastic writings on the counter. The cashier, a soft-spoken woman in her 50s, didn't look up as she scanned the barcode. "Cash or card, Leo?" she asked, her voice flat, automatic. Keanu stared at her. "What did you call me?" She finally looked up. Her smile faltered. "Oh. I don't know. I'm sorry, I must've. That was strange." "It's fine," Keanu said. But his fingers curled tighter around the edge of the counter. At home that night, he stood in the dark kitchen, staring at his reflection in the window. The city glowed faint behind him. The faucet dripped. "Leo, not Keanu. Not sir. Not Mr. Not John." Leo. A name he hadn't spoken aloud since the interview, since the night he admitted just once that he had met a man calling himself Leo XIV, days before he was named Pope, and now the name was following him. Whispered. Offered gently. Never questioned that he didn't tell anyone. Not his agent. Not the few friends he still kept close. Some truths rot under air. Others are meant to stay in the soil, but it didn't stop. A barista at a corner cafe in Venice handed him his drink without asking his name. On the cup, Leo accented, handwritten, like the French word for lion. In Griffith Park, an elderly woman passed him on the trail and smiled, as if greeting a neighbor. "Still walking, Leo?" she asked, and once, in a quiet church downtown where he sometimes slipped in through the side entrance and sat in the back, invisible, a child in a red hoodie looked straight at him and said, "I saw your face in a book." Keanu turned. "What book?" The child shrugged. "The one with the fire and the white cloak." The man said, "He carries water." "That's you, right?" Keanu's throat tightened. "Who told you that?" But the child's mother had already taken his hand and led him down the aisle. He went home that night and sat in the garden. No candles. No incense. Just cold air and the sound of the wind in the ivy. He didn't believe in omens. But he believed in presence. He'd felt it before. On a quiet mountain. In a dying man's breath. In that chapel in Alaska where a man in plain black had spoken to him like he was not a visitor, but a vessel. And now, the name. Repeating. Quietly. From voices that couldn't have known what it meant. He opened a book at random, an old Latin breviary someone had gifted him once. The page fell open to a prayer attributed to Pope Leo XIV. He read it. Slowly. Then again, Domini, audi vocem tuum in silento nominis me. Lord, I hear your voice in the silence of my name. His hands trembled slightly. He left the book on the table and walked to the mirror, looked at his own reflection. Not with vanity, but with hunger. Searching for what had changed. He didn't look like Leo, but he didn't feel like Keanu anymore either, and in the distance faint, almost imagined he thought he heard church bells. Just one toll. No rhythm. No pattern. He turned toward the sound, and whispered, "If you're calling me, say it to my face." The camera had been rolling for a while, but neither of them spoke. The interviewer, a woman in her early 40s, soft-voiced, with an academic calm about her, had been warned in advance. He might not talk about the Pope thing. She was told not to push, not to joke, not to speculate. And so she didn't. She just asked about stillness, about memory, about silence, and then, somewhere between a question about solitude and a mention of mountains, Keanu exhaled and said, "Can I tell you something that's not on the sheet?" She blinked once. Of course. He leaned forward. Fingers laced. Elbows resting on his knees. "It's been strange since I said it. About Leo." She didn't speak. Just nodded, slow. "I haven't talked about it again." Not really. Didn't feel like there was a place for it. But after that interview, I started noticing something. Small things. Quiet things. People calling me by the wrong name. Except it wasn't wrong. His eyes lowered. They kept calling me Leo. In cafes. On trails. In bookstores. Little kids. Strangers. And they all said it with this casual knowing. Like they'd always called me that. He laughed, barely, but there was no joy in it. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But then it kept happening. One woman said, "You're not done yet, Leo." Just like that. And I asked her what she meant. She didn't even remember saying it. A pause. I didn't tell anyone. "You're the first." I wrote it down in a notebook. I don't show people. Names. Places. Times. The things they said. He looked at her then. Directly. "Last week, I went back to Alaska." She raised her eyebrows slightly. He nodded. "Same monastery. Same road. Same cold." He swallowed, but the chapel was locked. Not boarded. Not broken. Just locked. A small sign on the door said, "Closed for winter renovation." But I remembered they don't close that place. Not in winter. That's when people need it the most. I walked around it 3 times. I didn't knock. I just stood there. My breath in the air, the trees completely still. And I waited. He closed his eyes for a moment, not for a voice. I wasn't expecting lightning. I wanted to be near the space where I saw him. Where he said those things to me. "You carry water. Not flame. When the dome falls, wait in the ash." He said he'd find me again. A long silence, and Keanu smiled, but it was tired. Hollowed out, and he didn't show up. Not like last time. Not in person. But when I walked back to my rental truck, there was a piece of paper under the wiper. One line. Handwritten. Not by me. Not by anyone at the monastery, I asked. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded slip of paper and handed it to her. She read it aloud. The man who carries water forgets his own thirst. Her hand trembled slightly. Do you think he left it? Keanu looked down. I don't know who he is. I know less now than I did when I first saw him. But I know that what's happening isn't over. And it's not public. It's not political. It's not prophecy. What is it then? He looked up again. It's personal. A pause. Then, not just for me. For others, too. Maybe they've seen him. Maybe they've only heard something. Maybe they wake up with the name Leo in their mouth and don't know why. She nodded, slow, breath caught in her throat. Do you think he's watching? Keanu's gaze drifted past her. Past the camera. Into something the lens couldn't capture. I think he's waiting. The lights buzzed softly above them. No one in the crew dared speak, and for the first time in the entire interview, she whispered, waiting for what? Keanu's answer came without hesitation, for me to stop being afraid of who I'm not. The interview never aired, not because of controversy. There was none. Not because Keanu asked them to pull it. He didn't. The footage simply went still. One of the producers said the audio glitched. Another claimed the lighting corrupted the file. No one explained it fully. No one seemed eager to try, and Keanu didn't ask that. He just disappeared again. Quietly. No headlines. No dramatic exits. He stayed in a cabin near Lake Arrowhead, days blurring into one another. He left his phone off. Turned off Wi-Fi. Lit candles. Walked barefoot on cold floors. That he was trying to listen. The dreams hadn't stopped. But they'd changed. Less vision, more weight. A sound, always the same, stone on stone, grinding slowly. And then the voice, not always his own. You forgot your thirst. On the fifth morning, a manila envelope appeared outside the door. It hadn't come by mail. No postage. No return address. Just a red wax seal, heavy, unbroken, marked not with the papal coat of arms, but a simple letter, L. He stood there for several minutes before touching it. The air felt different. As if the silence had thickened. He carried it inside, placed it on the kitchen table, stared at it while the kettle boiled and whistled. He didn't drink the tea. Just sat down and broke the seal. Inside, one folded sheet of parchment. No date. No header, just this: to the one who carries water in a land of fire. You were seen. You were permitted to speak. This was allowed, not requested. The name has passed to you. Not in title. In weight, that which burns will call you again. When the dome begins to hum, return to the mountain. There is no second warning. Plus Vaticanus, via manus retenta. Keanu read it again. And again. That he checked the envelope for any second page. Nothing. Then he reread the line, the name has passed to you. Not a metaphor. Not poetry. A statement. That he stood up. Paced. That he had been to that mountain. Alaska. The monastery with the locked chapel. The man in black. The boy who said, "You're not done yet." He knew which dome they meant, not St. Peter's, the dome he saw in his dream. Cracked in silence. Humming like bone under pressure. As if God had built something the world forgot, and it was about to open. He looked outside. The snow had started falling again. But it wasn't cold. He folded the letter, placed it into a drawer, and locked it. Then he picked up the old breviary, the one with Leo XIV's quote, and opened it again, but the page had changed, the quote was gone. In its place, a single line had been scrawled in faded ink: "He will not sit on the throne. He will walk beside it." Keanu didn't move. He knew what was being said, he knew they didn't want him to respond, but he also knew the Vatican had written to him, not about Leo XIV, but because they believed he was becoming him. He didn't tell anyone, not his agent, not his driver, not even the woman who sometimes watered his plants. He booked nothing. No hotel. No press. He left Los Angeles before the sun had risen, before the city had a chance to wake up and ask where he was going. Keanu drove north, then flew, then rented a car that smelled like someone else's. He drove through Anchorage in silence. Through the narrow roads slicked with frost. Past the gas stations that looked like outposts in a dying world. Past the power lines that groaned in the wind, then deeper where the signal died and only memory remained. The mountain stood exactly where he'd left it, still. Snow-veiled. Sharp like a thought you can't shake, the monastery emerged like a breath from the woods. Familiar, but not welcoming. Its roof now heavier under the snow. Its windows black. No candles. No movement, but the chapel door was open. No monks greeted him. No footsteps followed his. Only wind, dry and slow, that seemed to speak but never say words. Keanu stepped inside. The air was cold, but not empty. It pressed against his chest like a waiting hand. The benches were there, just as he remembered. The altar bare. The old wooden crucifix darker now, as if time had soaked into it. He walked to the third row. The place where he had once Saturday the man in black, the one who called himself Leo, the one who now wore white. Keanu sat in the same seat. He didn't pray, he didn't speak, he just listened, and then he heard it. A low sound. Subtle. Deep. Not from the walls, not from the wind, from beneath, like a hum.no machine could make that sound. It wasn't mechanical. It was old. He stood slowly. Walked down the aisle. Knelt near the altar. The stone beneath him was uneven. Ancient. He placed his hand flat on the ground. The hum grew louder, not in the ears, in the bones. He whispered, barely, "I'm here." No one answered, but the chapel grew warmer. Like breath on the back of the neck. He closed his eyes, and suddenly he remembered things he never lived, the walls of a fortress burning in silence. A golden ring cracking in his hand. A white cloak folded at his feet. The phrase, "He will not sit on the throne. He will walk beside it." And then a voice, not external. Not internal. Just present. "Do you understand now why you were permitted to speak?" Keanu didn't move. The voice wasn't familiar. It wasn't Leo's. It wasn't his own. "You said it out loud. Once. And so you were seen. And now, you must choose." He opened his eyes. The chapel was the same. Still, but he noticed something he hadn't before. A narrow door behind the altar built into the stone. He stood. Walked toward it. There was no handle, just a carving. Aquam portus non tenet, water does not hold the gate. He touched the stone, and it moved, not back. Down. A soft grind of ancient weight releasing. A stair revealed in darkness. Cold air rose from below. Keanu stood at the threshold. This wasn't symbolic, this wasn't a metaphor, this was an entrance, and behind it silence that had waited centuries. He stepped forward. 1 foot. Then the next. The stone above sealed behind him, without sound. The stone sealed behind him without echo, not a slam. Not a weight. Just a final breath as though the chapel itself had exhaled. Keanu stood still for several seconds, unable to see anything. But he didn't reach for light. That he knew this was not a place that welcomed fire. That he walked slowly, hand brushing the left wall, cool, carved, worn smooth over centuries. The air was old, not stale. Preserved. It smelled of ash, of something buried long ago that had never decayed. There were no sounds except his own footsteps. And even they sounded borrowed. That he counted the stairs in silence. 70-7. The bottom, the corridor narrowed. No torches. No candles. Just a soft glow from a head, dim, silver, without source. As if the walls remembered moonlight and had decided not to let it go, the floor flattened. The corridor opened, and then he saw him, Leo, the same man from Alaska, the same man from his dream, but now he stood in white, barefoot on cold stone, his back turned. Keanu froze. The robe wasn't ornate. No gold. No embroidery. Just clean, white linen, slightly frayed at the bottom like a garment passed from hand to hand across centuries. Leo spoke first. You were not expected. And yet you came. His voice was unchanged. Low. Quiet. Worn like prayer. Keanu took a step forward. You left the door open. Leo turned. His eyes were exactly as they had been in that chapel, timeless, empty of demand, full of knowing. Keanu said nothing more. Leo looked at him for a long while. Not judging. Not searching. Then, you still think this is about you? Keanu breathed in, but didn't argue. It never was. He gestured to the space around them, the stone chamber, the silence, the shape of something ancient in the darkness. This place is not where the church begins. It's where it ends. Keanu stepped closer. Then why bring me here? Leo didn't answer. He walked slowly to the center of the chamber. There, embedded in the floor, was a circle, dark metal, inscribed with Latin, too whether to read. Leo stood at its edge. There were once 7. Each bore the name but not the weight. He looked up. You are the 8th. But you do not sit. You carry. Keanu's voice cracked when he spoke. What am I carrying? That which no one else would. Leo stepped aside. Come stand here. Keanu moved to the center of the circle. The floor pulsed beneath his feet. Not heat, not cold, just presence. Like standing in the palm of something that had waited too long. Leo spoke again, voice softer now. This is not coronation. This is remembering. You were never asked to lead. Only to hold. Hold the silence. Hold the thirst. Hold the space where the voice used to be. Keanu's eyes filled, but he didn't wipe them. And if I drop it? He asked. Leo didn't move. Then it begins. A silence passed between them that wasn't just absence. It was recognition. Keanu placed his hands at his sides, the chamber dimmed, and then Leo began to walk backward, into the shadowed arch behind the chamber. No goodbye. No instruction. Just one look over his shoulder. You've been given nothing. And so you can be trusted. Then he vanished into the dark.